We'll start as soon as we can figure out who's got their audio on. Please mute your microphones and your speakers. Hello? It's Mr. Justice, Professor Justice, Director Justice. We got it? Okay, we're good. No. It must be North Cowichan's laptops are not properly set up. Got it? All right. Always there for you, Alternate Director Manhas. With that, looks like Alternate Director Manhas is the only alternate director. Welcome, Alternate Director Manhas. And I believe Director Staples is joining us via WebEx, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this special, I think. It says regular, but I think it's special because it's on Thursday, and Thursday is always a special day. Board meeting for February 8th, 2024. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize with gratitude that the CVRD is and we are on the unceded territories of the Kwetson, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Layaxan, Paukachin, Dididat, and Pachidat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. And with that, we will get underway. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. May I have the approval of the agenda?
No change to the agenda. Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director McGonigal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. Moving to public input period. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on the agenda item before the the board considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been subject to a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum.
So we welcome now anyone who would like to give public input on agenda items before we get underway. Are there any online, Ms. Boyd? Okay. And just press the blue button on the microphone there, and please go ahead.
Thank you, directors. I'm here speaking in favor of David Slade's thesis. This morning we learned that in 2023 we reach 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So everyone is concerned about climate change. And climate change, we have two issues. One is we're producing too much in the way of greenhouse gases. And secondly, we are destroying the natural systems that take up carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So I was very pleased to see the outcome of yesterday's vote. Salt marshes, when they're fully functioning, can absorb 62 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare per year. So when this salt marsh becomes fully functioning, it'll absorb the equivalent of about 1,000 cars worth of CO2 emissions. When we see the forests around us, we think that all these trees are absorbing carbon dioxide. But if you look at the Natural Resources Canada State of Canadian Forests report each year, although that report says we're doing really well with our forests, there is a graph there that shows whether the forests are net absorbing carbon dioxide or emitting carbon dioxide. And that report, year after year, shows that since 2001, our forests are net carbon dioxide emitters. So we have a problem. So I think the CVRD should participate in this 30 by 2030 endeavor by the federal and provincial governments and use our park acquisitions funds as leverage to get more forests set aside, not just for parkland, but also for nature preserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yearlink. And we'll take our next speaker. The microphone's already on, so you can just feel free to introduce yourself and give us your input.
I hate doing this. I don't like speaking in public, but I have to because I have a 2-week-old baby granddaughter, and that's why I'm here. We need a livable future, and I beg you to please support restoring full funding to the Regional Parks Acquisition Service. I concur with what David Slade is going to say and what this gentleman just spoke so factually. We need to take every measure we can to make our future livable. Please buy more parkland. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have time for more speakers, so if we have for public input.
Hi, everyone. My name's Bruce Coates. I'm with the Cowichan Valley Naturalist Society and the Land Trust. And I also am speaking here briefly in support of full funding for the Parks Acquisition budget and Dave Slade's discussion to follow, I think. I think that what happens is that human beings spend most of our times in places like this. You know, we aren't out in nature. We go for a walk, you know, a couple hours here and there, and we live our lives in our homes, and we forget that there's a whole world of beings out there that need protection and help and encouragement, and the only way they can do that is if we have as much land and space for them as possible. You know, the biodiversity is a parallel problem to climate change, and it's a big problem, and we need to start working on that, and again, towards those 30 by 30 goals. So yeah, I just wanted to say that briefly. Thanks.
Thank you. Still have time for more public input if those would like to give input on items on the agenda.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my statements. Jim Wisnia from Mill Bay. Just like to remind people that besides all of the biological and public health benefits of taking care of our natural areas and increasing the amount of protected area, there's also a really strong business case for doing so. Things like tourism, increasing nearby property values, all those sorts of things. And, you know, saving on our tax expenditures in the long run by making a healthier environment for everyone. So please support full funding of parks acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have some time for public input. Microphone's on, so just go ahead.
Good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Slade. I have been on the Area E Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee for some over 15 years, I think. And during the course of my tenure there, we have seen some amazing land opportunities come up for the Cowichan Valley Regional District and the different area parks. And due to a lack of communications, funding worries, and issues, those opportunities have passed. And some of those, of course, will never come back again. And so they aren't making land anymore. In fact, we're starting to lose some during the course of climate change. And I don't think there's anything more valuable that we can pass on to future generations than protected public available use land to stay in touch with nature with and to benefit the whole community and encourage people to set down roots here and raise their families. So I am in full support. In fact, our commission was quite excited when the bylaw passed, and extremely disappointed when it was cut to the full extent available for the land acquisition funds. So absolutely, myself and I know a great many member of the Parks committee members are in full support of the reinstatement of the acquisition funds that David is going to bring back up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Still have time if anyone in the gallery would like to give input on today's agenda. All right, I'm seeing no more people stepping to the lectern, so we'll move on in our agenda. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. Moving to delegations. D1, David Slade, Socially Responsible Investing Cowichan regarding Parks and Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund.
Welcome, Mr. Slade. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, honored elected representatives, and respected staff members. My name is David Slade, and for those of you who don't know me, I am a born and raised South Cowichan, a child of the valley. I have 4 children and I have 7 grandchildren, also growing up in this place that I feel so lucky for us all to call home. I am also a retired partner in the water well drilling business, Drill Well Enterprises, 3rd generation family business in the valley here. I would like to apologize for coming before you yet again. I'm hoping that you're not getting too sick of my presence and my voice, but I want you to take some solace in that it could have been so much worse had I been successful in my run for an elected member of the council. So anyways, I am here representing Socially Responsible Investing Cowichan. So what exactly is that? It is a group of individuals who are keen on using our investment dollars to build sustainability and to fight climate change. We consist of a mailing list of about 50 people, all Cowichan Valley residents. There's a Facebook page called Socially Responsible Investing Cowichan that, for some reasons that are strange to me, there's 601 followers. But on that Facebook page, you'll find information about investments that don't include oil, don't include munitions, don't include tobacco, and that provide returns of 23%, 20%, 19%, 16% in the last fiscal year. So there is very, very real opportunities for people to invest in things that benefit our future rather than harm it. And if you've ever seen a small group of people standing peacefully in front of some of the financial institutes in the Cowichan Valley with placards announcing alternatives to some of the large financial institutions for your investment dollars, those were likely members of Socially Responsible Investing Cowichan. So I'm here today to talk to you about Budget 2024. And I know budget time is always a difficult time. There's stresses, there is desperate need in our community, there's no doubt about it. There's people and groups that are tugging on your heartstrings and pulling on the purse strings, the public purse strings of the regional district. But I'm not here to try and take money out of the public purse. I'm here to try and put more money into the public purse. I'm asking you, on behalf of myself and my family and my supporters, to please raise my taxes. Oh, I've got a presentation here somewhere that's supposed to be keyed up.
We'll put you on pause for a sec, Mr. Slade,
Thank
while
you.
we get that sorted
I don't see my
out.
timer up here, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Ms. Boyd has it there. I guess there may be a malfunction with this timer. How much time has elapsed?
We're at 7 bells right now.
Okay.
It's not there yet.
Okay, we'll have your timer up there.
Technology.
While they figure out those technical difficulties, we'll try and figure out the technical difficulties where most of the directors aren't showing as in the meeting, even though they are. Oh, I see them all on page 2. Unfortunately, it might be just, yeah, in bottom right-hand corner, there's a down arrow. If you click it, I can see Director Morrison and Abbott and Director McClinton. And so it's just that we have whatever that screen on should probably say don't show non-video participants. Yeah. Which is also the screen that Mr. Slade's trying to work from. We don't have apparently staff to support the issue. Oh, okay. Wouldn't be a CVRD meeting without a little technical difficulty. Never time.
Oh, he's doing it.
I think we're doing IT right now. I know that this item is on the agenda as for information, but I'm really hoping that members of the board will think that it's worthy of some action as well. It's probably my fault.
Don't worry.
Thank you.
So I think we're still working out some kinks because in our WebEx meeting, no, it only showed 6 on the screen actually, but we can figure that out after we get through the presentation. The presentation is showing now, Mr. Slade, so please continue.
Okay, so thank you once again. So back in, let's go to the next slide. And how do I go to the next slide? I'm trying the arrow buttons, up, down, sideways, enter. Oh, okay, hold on, there's a little advance. There we go, okay, yahoo!
Now we just have to get the pop-up on the screen off so that it's not covering your presentation.
It's not on my screen.
No, it's not.
When they updated WebEx, they have all these pop-up hints and
Oh.
tips, which are very annoying. No, it's still on the screen.
It's not showing up for us on here
Oh,
to fix it.
no. Well, it's not showing on mine either, but just go ahead, Mr. Slade. I'm not sure what it is, but hopefully it's not covering your slides on YouTube.
Okay, all right. So I can see it very clearly. I'm sorry that you can't, but so 26 years ago, in 2008, there was a region-wide referendum whereby the regional district board at the time went out to the taxpayers throughout the region and asked them whether or not they would like to see money taken from their taxes every year, or more correctly, added to their taxes every year, in order to create a parks acquisition fund. The referendum was not close. Region-wide, it was more than 2-to-1 in favor. In Area A, it was 4-to-1. Area B, it was 6-to-1 in favor. Area C was 4-to-1 in favor. D was 3-to-1. Duncan, 3-to-1. Ladysmith, 3-to-1 in favor. And North Cowichan, more than 2-to-1 in favor overall. Even the seniors, who are like myself, who are senior citizens on fixed incomes, were overwhelmingly supportive of creating and funding a parks acquisition function. It was a clear mandate where a majority of 1 would have been required for it to succeed. It actually had more than 5,000 more voters in support of that referendum than against it. So a clear mandate to increase taxes and purchase parkland. And as a taxpayer, the amount of that referendum, I believe, was suggested to be $5 per $100,000 of property value, or $50 per year. And of course, as a taxpayer, I would never expect, when a tax had been approved, that it would ever be less than the amount that it was approved. So let's just look at the math for a minute here. On the slide that you can see some of.
Sorry, Mr. Slade, just so you know, on our screens, we can see it completely. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
the screen in-house for some
Okay,
reason.
good, thank you. So the 2008 referendum approved $5 for $100,000. And then by bylaw, it was up to $7 per $100,000. So that means that originally it was for $1 million property, it would have been $50 a year. And then in 2014, the bylaw was introduced that made it approximately $7 per $100,000, or $70 per year for $1 million property. So I don't know why it was up from the original $5 to $7, but Jerry Giles told me that when they were contemplating, Jerry Giles, a former CVRD board member and chair, told me that when they were contemplating reducing it, that she got more outraged letters and phone calls from citizens saying that we asked you to institute this and we expect you to fund it. So perhaps that was the impetus for raising it. But currently, it's proposed at $750,000, which is a mere $1.49 per $100,000 of property value, which means a $1 million property owner would be contributing only $20 a year to this fund, which I would suggest is woefully inadequate. That works out to approximately 5 cents a day towards parkland acquisition. If fully funded, it would be $7.42 per $100,000 in property value. That would raise $2.5 million annually. And the cost to a $1 million property owner would still only be 20 cents a day. I mean, that's not a half a cup of coffee. That's not even as much as you would leave for a tip for a cup of coffee. It's a very small ask, but it could create $2.5 million every year towards parks acquisition. So what's changed since 2008? Well, we have way more people wanting to use our parks facilities. We have less land available for parks. And the cost of land has more than tripled. These are all reasons why we should be increasing the Parks Acquisition Fund, not reducing it. So at the very least, we should be maximizing what's already allowed. And I would like to just point out the language in this bylaw. It says that the statutory limitations for this fund will be the greater of $958,000 or 0.0742 per $1,000 of net value. So it's the greater of 958,000 or 2.5 million is what the bylaw says. I kind of thought bylaws were the rules about how we governed ourselves. So anyways, I would like to see us respect the vote of the citizens and the bylaw that was instituted at this table. And we got another slide. So what would we do if we had that money? Well, there are properties all around the Cowichan Valley. Strategic properties like Grant Lake at the headwaters of the Cocosila watershed, like the Cocosila old growth forests, like the Shaw Creek up at Lake Cowichan, and like Cobble Hill Mountain, which a lot of people think is a park, but actually 90% of the Cobble Hill Mountain is crowned woodlot. That means trees waiting to be cut. They have got no formal protection, no lasting permanent protection on more than 90% of Cobble Hill Mountain. And as has been mentioned before, there is a move by the provincial government to protect 30% of our natural areas by 2030. We could use that money in the Parks Fund to leverage other funds, to work with senior government, to work with NGOs, to work with First Nations to create maybe Indigenous protected areas. So here's 5 of the reasons why I think this is really, really important. Out of thousands of reasons why this is really, really important. Protecting ecosystems, protecting watersheds, protecting vulnerable places, creating spaces for people to go out and enjoy the public spaces. The pandemic showed us how valuable these spaces are. And I see I'm about to run out of time.
I'll give you a little bit of grace considering the technical challenges.
Thank you so much. I'm just about done. So the pandemic showed us how valuable these public outdoor spaces were, and what could be better for your mental health than to get out into the outdoors? What could be better for your physical health than to have spaces where you can recreate and get back with nature? Carbon sequestration has been mentioned. Wild places are important for that. Protecting watersheds is critically important as we move forward, and protected spaces become less available. So I don't think there's a better way to protect nature, to protect the health and well-being of our citizens, to create a legacy of parks, than to fully fund this service. And like I said, I really hope that we will consider, someone here will consider this a potential action item. And I just refer you back to the referendum. The taxpayers spoke very loudly and very clearly in support of this fund. So I would, I don't have a specific reason why that fund needs to be there, but there are so many opportunities before us. And if we don't have the bucks, there's no doubt we won't get the bang. So please consider fully funding, restoring full funding to the Parks Acquisition Service. And thank you very much for your time. And if there was any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Slade, and I'll start taking names. I have Directors Acton and Wilson, and Abbott. And if we could lower the presentation, then I could see the rest of the directors online as well. While we're doing that, I just want to say no apologies necessary. You can come here as much as you like. And I always, we always do appreciate your input, insights, and especially the passion with which you share them. I'll always say this when you come, though, we don't always agree on everything, but I think we fundamentally agree on the underpinnings and the reasons why you bring forward the things that you do. I think around this table, for me, we often have to balance competing priorities, and we're at an intersection of challenges that require more and more money every day. Not just the inflationary pressures that we're all under, not just the homelessness and opioid crises, not just the climate crises, and also respecting that our senior governments, I don't think, fund local governments to the degree that they should, and we always are loath to put more pressure on taxpayers. So that's just my perspective, but I also don't disagree with the thrust and impetus of your initiatives and your passion. So I'll go to Director Acton, Wilson, and Abbott, and then for those who are joining online, if you can raise your little virtual hand, it just makes it easier for me to find you. And I would just ask again to staff if we can possibly change our screen so that the non-video participants are hidden. That way, because on my screen right now, I can see everyone with their video on. Online, I don't believe you can. That's just a setting. I can run up there and do it myself. It just says hide non-video participants. under the, you click the layout button and then just check layout and then check.
I'm sure I could crash the whole system for you.
Just down there, this little toggle there, hide
one?
no. Hide participants without video. And leave the names up. That way people can make note. There we go. All right, we're rolling. Woo! Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Slade as a fellow Area B resident, although your home is in Cobble Hill, and evidently your heart is in the region. So thank you for your passion, your commitment to community, and coming here today. So nice to hear your voice.
Thank you, Director Acton.
Director Wilson and then Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just gotta find the microphone over there.
Microphone came on and then off.
And then,
There
you
we go.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I got to admire your persistence. It's almost as persistent as I am with some of the things that we go on. One of the things that that comes to mind, you referred to mathematics there, and the number of people who were in favour, etc. At the time, if my estimates are correct, the population was about 70,000. It's now up to about 90,000. So overall, the number of people who voted was about 19.5%. Those who voted in favour was actually about 14%. So it's not a high overall number that voted, but it passed. So we'll leave that at that. But one of the things that really I take issue with is the use of the words mere and only. To me, $50 is not mere, it's not only. And given the the circumstances now in 2023, they're different, 24, they're different to what they were in 2008. So what would you say to the residents nowadays, given the financial situation that they find themselves in now, which is far different to what 2008 was? Is $50 still mere, given the inflation rates and all the rest of it? To me, it's not. And I do think that it's just a little bit over the top using those words. What would you say to residents about the words of mere and only, or $50 and $70?
Well, I guess, Director Wilson, thank you for your question. I would suggest that the difference in the value of $1 when that referendum was passed, that dollar is worth probably 40 cents now. So the contribution that's being asked on a dollar for dollar basis is actually less than it was at the time that referendum was passed. And that's because of inflationary pressures, just like you mentioned. I mean, there's an offset in that property values have gone up. So a property that might have been worth $250,000 then is now assessed at $750,000. But I still feel in the big picture, there isn't any more valuable investments. That's what makes our community a place where we want to live. Those are the kind of amenities that bring joy to our citizens. And moving forward, I think that is the way we are going to build the best community in British Columbia, is by increasing our access to the outdoors and further preserving those special places for future generations. Because once they're gone forever.
Yeah. Thank you. Follow up, please, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
There was Bernard Ehrlich, Dr. Ehrlich did refer to the climate change problems, which I acknowledge do exist here. And then there was, he did mention that the marshes absorb the emissions of up to 1,000 vehicles. But then there was talk about increasing tourism. So I can't quite equate the two. If you want to bring more tourists in with all the emissions that they will then present, how do you equate the two that come to that? On one case, reducing the amount, and on the other case, increasing the amount.
Well, I think that's an excellent question too. Thank you very much. I believe that the pandemic and people's concerns around climate change have made staycations far more of a reality than long distance vacations. So I think that putting those spaces in place so that our citizens are more rewarded for staying home than they are for going to other places where there is more wild spaces. When I drive down the coast, I've done it a couple of times of Oregon and Washington, the public parks there are absolutely outstanding and amazing and huge. And when I look at the map of the Cowichan Valley Regional District and I compare it to the Nanaimo Regional District and the Capital Regional District, and I haven't done the math, but when you zoom in on the big green spots in the north and the south of us, they're mostly parks. When you zoom in on the big green spots on our map, they're mostly golf courses. I think that we are really underserved by public spaces and protected areas compared to our regional district neighbors. And that's just my view. I don't have the math to prove that, but it just seems to me that we are falling behind and falling further and further behind the more we underfund our parks acquisition.
Yeah, thank you. And one final one, I promise it will be the last.
It will.
Yeah, sorry. I forgot where I was going to now. You've shocked me. No, that's okay. No, one of the things that came up was there were two things that were mentioned here. One was publicly accessible and the other one was preservation. How do you equate the two there? Because, you know, you're talking about making these things publicly accessible to everybody, but on the other hand, somebody's mentioned about preservation. Does that mean that there will be no public access?
I believe that is important in some places, but of course there needs to be a body of, elected officials and knowledgeable citizens that could decide where that money was best spent and how to make the best use of it. What was the most vital as far as protection versus access? So yeah, those are real struggles, but you can't do either of those things if you don't have the money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Abbott, then Morrison. I have myself on the list, but I'll also look for other hands as the discussion evolves. Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Slade, for the compelling and very commonsensical approach to bringing this forth. I would love to learn from some of the more seasoned and long-term directors how we have gotten to this state from 2008 to the present. But something that you said that in your presentation was Grant Lake. I'm intrigued with Grant Lake. You as a family involved with water, I think we're all going to be looking forward 6 months from now when there's absolutely no water coming down Coxsila, and Cowichan is probably going to be challenged. We need a headwater like the city of Victoria has with Sukwater Lake Reservoir. We need that Grant Lake, and I don't know how we could acquire it. I believe it's owned by an oligarch, or
It just got sold in the last 12 months.
okay. To me, we're going to be talking in the summer about some pretty horrific, with no snowpack, no rain, these events, and we're not trapping any of this. And I think $2.5 million is chicken feed. And we're not even putting that aside. So
Right.
I think the battle has been won in 08, in 14, and you are representative of a lot of taxpayers that are saying, I'm prepared to pay what it takes, and please impact my tax statement. So thank you for coming and giving us this approach.
Thank you, Director Abbott. And I would say not what it takes, just what has already been approved is all that I'm asking for at this point in time. I'm not asking for more than what has been approved by this board and by the taxpayers.
Thank you. Director Morrison?
Thank you, Chair. I'll get to the question, but in answering of Director Abbott's point, how we got here, I can tell you that I was elected the year that this referendum passed, and it's just my sense that in those 15 years, I've been in a defense mode the entire time in just defending this level of funding. And it's been very clear that there's added requirements, added responsibilities, and so I'll go. This is my question is that given that when the referendum initially passed, ecosystem services and critical habitats, if they were even on the horizon and being discussed, were very, very tiny components for consideration. And today it's equal to, or maybe even more important than the recreational aspects of whatever lands we may purchase. So my question is how can you and your group and the public help to change the hearts and minds of not only the public and the user groups, but the elected officials, and not just here at our municipal councils? Because, as I said, if I've been here for 15 years and I've been defending what's a base level of funding, how can we change the hearts and minds of people so that we can maybe one day get to that 2.5 million, which is the maximum requisition? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I guess I look at it, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Thank you very much for your question. And I honestly didn't believe that you were that old.
I've been here that long, I'm not that old.
Right now, we're funding this at about 25% of what the bylaw states about what was approved by the taxpayers. And I think that you were very, very right in that when this was first brought in, there was so much land that was available, and there was so little awareness about species at risk and biodiversity lost, and even the benefits of time in the outdoors from a mental and physical health standpoint. So I think that the imperative is there, and I can't speak for that. I don't even know if I voted in this referendum, quite honestly, or even how I would have voted at that time. But I've come a long way since then, and I don't think that there's anything more important than we can do for future generations, for the saving of our own ecosystems in this valley. It is so fragile. We are on a knife edge now as to what is going to happen here and all around us in the years to come. And will this make a difference in the big picture? Well, maybe not. But maybe if everybody is inspired to do more, to protect more, to put more aside for future generations and for nature, maybe it will make a difference in the big picture. I'm sure it'll make a difference here in our own home.
Thank you. I still have myself on the list, no other directors at this time. Director Nicholson, and then Director Deck.
I just want to say thank you so much for this, David, and thanks to the people who provided input at public input period. It's a really important issue.
Thank you, Alison.
Director Deck.
Thank you, David. I would like to thank you and the other folks who are asking for fully funding the Parks Acquisition Fund, and also those way back in 2008 who, unbeknownst to them, were pointing the way for us. Even though the circumstances have changed, they've changed for the worse, actually, and our forests, those parklands, are really where the water comes from, and that is absolutely the most critical issue here, as far as I can see. And I'm absolutely in support of fully funding. And also, if we act locally and others act locally, maybe the impacts will be global. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Deck. And and I echo your sentiments. It is so important, and the foundation that was laid by those wise forerunners of this board, they were brave and they were wise, and they laid a foundation for the rest of the board and the rest of the communities that would follow after them to do what I think we really need to do. And I'd like to see us take advantage of that foundation that was laid by those people who came before.
Thank you. Director Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, David, for coming and helping us think through this one a little bit further. I just wanted to ask you if you were aware, I'm sure you're aware of, that we've approved funding for an update of the Parks and Trails Master Plan, which will include a regional parks acquisition strategy, which will also look at appropriate levels of funding, which I guess is going to start pretty quickly. There's an advisory There's a bunch of people who applied for an advisory committee, which I guess as soon as this budget process is over, will start happening. So I just sort of open question, are you aware of that? Are you planning on participating?
I applied.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I got a notice that it's been put on hold for some reason.
I think just the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that giving some, I guess, some foundational funds for them to get a running start at the Parks and Trails Master Plans, I think that would be really helpful.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else on my speakers list. I do want to say, despite, in good humor, our back and forths on a lot of different issues around the environment, and that I think it's becoming more and more clear every year how important it is to preserve those special pieces of land, especially those that are most important to our watersheds. I know in our work together on the Cowichan Watershed Board, the more and more that we learn about the delicate balance in our ecosystems and the importance of biodiversity, the more important it is to preserve as many of those key lands as possible. I've had experiences, both positive and negative, in my shorter than Director Morrison's time in local government, but now getting a bit of tenure myself, that are both frustrating and sometimes really buoying. We're working in Ladysmith to acquire some sensitive ecosystems as part of development projects, and trying to move development lands to more suitable lands while protecting those rare ecosystems that support biodiversity. But we've also had opportunities lost where we had opportunities in the Ladysmith area to protect both the Holland and Stocking watersheds that failed an electoral process to make those things happen. That being said, I know there's also a growing cost to maintaining, once you acquire lands, to truly protect them. Whether that's intrusion into those owned lands from outsiders, which we've seen people cutting wood and stuff on lands they do not own, or if becoming for recreational use, just the reality of liability, maintenance, and things like that. And I think that's why this conversation has shifted over the 15-plus years now that the acquisition fund has been in place, from purely recreational acquisitions to protection, to look at that, because it's not only the acquisition value and the ecological values, but cheaper to maintain, if you will, if you're just letting it be. So I've learned more and become more and more supportive of that perspective, especially as in the last few years, like everyone in the Valley, I shouldn't say everyone, but many in the Valley have taken more time in those natural spaces to preserve both my physical and mental health. And Director Nicholson talks a lot about when we have surveyed our citizenry, the shifting focus on health and wellness being focused on our outdoors. We are in the warm land, although it's often also the wet land. In the wintertime, I know myself, it's really important to do that. But circling back to my initial comments, I know we are still under quite a bit of financial strain. This is a particularly difficult budget year, and I think if you remain for the duration, many of you will see those sort of tension points, if you will, around tax increases and the things we must do legislatively, and the things that we want to do. So I just want to thank you for continuing to advocate for what's most important to you and to all of you that came. I have a great deal of respect for the passion, but not only that, the knowledge and sort of trying to present it in a balanced way that makes it more accessible to not just us at this table, but to everyone in our community that we have to answer to, because it gives us information that we can use to share with community members who may not quite understand the importance and the values that you bring forward. So I was going to wrap it up there, but Director Justice put his hand up, so I'll let him get the last word.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair.
And I apologize for going twice. I forgot to ask this part of the question, which is sort of unrelated to what I first said, but you mentioned the old growth stand on the Coxsila River, which is a fantastic place. If anybody hasn't been there, it's
I'd be happy to take anyone there if they would like to see it. It
Just-
is amazing.
gorgeous and very much like a sort of a cathedral grove in microcosm or something like that. But is it unprotected?
It is unprotected. It's only, it's actually an amazing story, and you can find it if you do a internet search. There was a team of loggers that was sent down there to start falling those trees, and that's going back, it's probably 25 years ago now. And they said this is just so rare now. There's nothing like it on southern Vancouver Island that I'm aware of. It's just so rare now and this close to our communities, so close to Victoria, that we can't cut these down. And they turned to their bosses and said, this should be preserved. But it has no permanent protection, and that could change tomorrow. So I think that's a great candidate because right now it's, probably as much a liability to the owners of the property as it is an asset. It's something that might very well be for sale if we were to approach them with it. But like I said, this is looked at, I know, as a discretionary budget, but I would suggest, based on the results of the referendum and the wording of the bylaw, that this isn't really discretionary. This is something that is of vital importance to the future of our community. So I would, hope that members would consider it that way, as opposed to something that can easily be slashed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I just want to check in with directors how we want to manage today. I was going to say we break hourly, but I think we can maybe try to get through one item on our agenda before we take a break. I'd go to Ms. Boyd for our next item.
Thank you, Chair. We have a report from the chairperson.
No, we don't.
Okay. Correspondence.
Just trying to move along.
All right, we'll move to 7, committee reports. CR1, report and recommendations from the Cowichan Lake Recreation Commission meeting of January 22nd, 2024. That it be recommended to the board that the 2024 Cowichan Lake Recreation CLR budget, Function 405, be amended to reduce debt services by $37,374 and increase transfer to capital reserves by $37,374, and that the 5-year debt repayments for 2025 to 2028 also be transferred to the capital reserves.
That's been moved by Director Douglas and seconded by Director Manhas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We might get through 2 items before the break. Ms. Boyd.
I'll put my, never mind. Report from recommendations from the Cowichan South Recreation Commission meeting of January 23rd, 2024. Recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the following amendments to the 2024 draft budget for Function 411 Kerry Park Recreation Center be approved, increasing R&M buildings general by $17,500, increase miscellaneous equipment by $5,000, increase purchased maintenance by $2,500, increase transfer from operating reserves by $17,500, and increase recovery of cost by $7,500.
That's been moved by Director Wilson and seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion on those items? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I want to thank everyone for the good, fast work this morning. Something tells me we'll get into more discussion as the day goes on. We'll break now for 10 minutes, be back at 5 after 11, and we'll go into staff reports. Thank you all very much. All right, folks, we'll get back underway. A lot of information available to us today, and I know Ms. Bowen is ready to rock and roll. So I will turn it to Ms. Boyd to introduce the next item, and we'll get back on with staff reports.
Thank you, Chair. SR1, report from the Finance Division, Corporate Services Department regarding summary of budget approvals. For information.
Ms. Bowen, do you have any presentation for us, or just here for questions? I know we've got all these wonderful spreadsheets.
Yes, I sent out,
And the font and colors mean I don't need my glasses, but I should probably grab them just in case I read these numbers wrong. Go ahead.
so yesterday I sent out some new information with regards, so I sent a new updated listing because there was a few changes on that. I also handed out this morning, I can bring it up on screen, I'll just have to find it here on the, about the breakdown of the core, how it breaks down to the supplementals, which are listed on that documentation that I sent out as a new updated yesterday. And I handed out today because I know some people like to see it on paper because it's much easier. So those are the documents. So if you have any questions or want to make any changes, today is the day and this is the time to make any changes to the numbers.
Absolutely. Director Acton, you're first.
I just have a question about how different departments take out the percentage for like accounting, legislative services. Does those fees, do they come out of just what's the tax requisition, or do they also come out of reserves that are being transferred forward, or how is that calculated again? I forget what this. Yeah, it's
So-
like the admin fees, but we have a name for it, but.
Are you talking about the allocation budgets?
Yes.
Okay,
Allocation budgets, thank you.
So allocation budgets, yes, they could, because they're covering ongoing operating expenses, they would be coming from requisitions. So when we change one, the allocation changes for others. So, but allocation budgets, once they've been done for the year, we don't touch them again, but they can get affected in the next year. So when we do the general government allocation, we're basing it on expenses from 2 years ago. So for the 2024 budget, it's basing it on expenses from 2022. And it's a big spreadsheet too that we take into everything. So it is affected by requisition.
Okay, so it comes out of, it's estimated from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it comes out of the tax requisition only. So when we carry forward money, say in our grant and aid or anything like that, it doesn't get a double bump again. So just
Right,
wanted
yeah.
to check that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Director Wilson and then Douglas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Tracy. Going through that bit there, regular supplementaries, what is that?
So we, through the chair, Director Wilson, so discussing with Danielle and Ian, we were trying to find a way to show which ones were for recreation only.
Okay.
And which ones were for the entire rest of the CVRD. So there's only like a small percentage, like a 0.23% belongs to the recreation functions, which belong to us, like the CCC, Shawnigan Lake. It doesn't include Fuller Lake or anything like
Okay.
that. And then the 155 is for everybody else that is put through supplements.
Okay, lovely, thank you. A follow-up, please, Mr. Chair. And on that same same sheet there, the total requisition increase is listed as 15.73%. But that, and again, for my own clarity, and I'm sure there are a few others here as well, that doesn't include things like the school tax, provincial tax, police, etc., hospital, BC assessment, the numbers that come out when you get your actual property tax demand.
Yes, you are correct on that. So to Chair Director Wilson, yes. So when a person in a rural property area gets their property tax, which you guys will be dealing with, they will have the school tax, all those are listed separately. Those ones are from the provincial, those ones, and then they'll have an area for the CVRD ones and parcel tax,
Yeah.
which are the ones that you guys influence, and we send those
Which
to
we
the
have no
province.
control over with
The other ones you
ones.
have
So-
no control over,
So
correct?
this 15 point, and I'm sorry to, interrupt, so this 15.73% is actually on the low side. When people get their actual tax demands, it's going to be a lot more than that. And that's stuff that we don't have any control over. Okay, thank you very much.
And Ms. Bowen, do you want to
Yeah.
add some?
Yeah, so through the chair to Director Wilson, this was brought up in some of our feedback on the online meetings, and I'm going to be working with communications and Danielle to come up with a nice fact sheet for you guys to have, and we will post information on the website as we did last year, but we'll add a little bit more to that information so that we'll have a place to direct people to kind of show them how it all breaks out, so that it makes it a little bit easier on all of us.
Great, thank you. Director Douglas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Bowen, a couple questions regarding the budget. First is, with the various changes that were made between the November 27th up to January 11th with regards to the supplementals approved by the Regional Recreation Commissions and the Committee of the Whole, I'm wondering if the schedules that are currently posted on the website reflect those increases, or if it's still based on the amounts prior to that. I'm thinking especially with regards to, Schedule E is the average home tax impact, which I know a lot of us are relying on in order to get a better understanding of how this is going to impact individual property owners.
So through the chair to Director Douglas. So yes, they are up to date as of with including the 16.8%, and without the changes that I found that I had to resend out. So there will be a decrease in some of those percentage or those numbers. We just have not had time between like yesterday and today to get those new schedules updated. But once we have that, they include everything that's on this sheet right now. That's in those numbers already. So everything that was approved from November, December, and in January, all of that is included in those numbers that are on the website. It's just there was a correction that needed to be made. Those are still included in there, so then it will drop it back down. But then if there's any changes today, those will be included when we update them next week. So the schedules will be updated.
Okay, but the Schedule E as of now includes the January 11th recommendations. But with the actual budgets for the particular functions, like I think, as far as I can tell, for function 100, obviously being one of the larger functions, that appears to be based on the numbers prior to January 11th.
So through the chair to Director Douglas, yes, we have not updated those ones. We just have not had time in finance to have
Okay.
that extra person to help us do that. So I still have to update the year-over-years and the 5-year financial plans, and then make sure everything balances in budget before we update that. So what we've gotten into is we do it at the start, and then once we approve everything, then we do it, update again with all the current numbers. It takes a lot of work to compile that information, so we just did not have the time in finance to do that.
Follow-up? Yeah, the other question was with regards to that function 100, just trying to get a handle on what the current increase is. So we provided the initial direction, the 3.5. Obviously, January 11th, it came back. Staff suggested, I think, 9.97 was most realistic or achievable budget increase, but then recommended to the board, the committee, they would increase it by, I believe it was 15.41% in order to avoid a service cut. From there, we added several supplementals to the amount of, I'm going to ask Ms. Bowen to just confirm my numbers right here. So I believe the 15.41% increase, we added $548,575 to the general government budget. The supplementals, by my calculation, work out to $417,364 for a total of $965,939. I'm just trying to get a handle on what the percentage increase is. So I believe it's 27.13%. Just wondering if you could confirm that number.
Through the chair to Director Douglas, I'd have to calculate that. I do not have that on me right now.
Okay.
Okay, we may want to look in that, but if I may, because I don't have any other speakers, so I'm jumping in, and I'll go to Director McClinton after, because I've already started. So I'm looking at Schedule E. So just for clarity, so I'm crystal clear, you said something like these were updated after January 11th, but there's some adjustments that have been made that might bring those numbers down?
Correct, because they are based on the 16.8%.
Right.
And right now, we're at 15.73.
Okay.
So there was a few supplementals that were included in error, so when those numbers got updated, that's what they were including.
Thank you.
So, but once we update it, those numbers will come out, but any changes you make today will get included.
Okay, and I want to thank my colleagues for, with Alarm, reminding me that Ladysmith's annual increase, I think now sits at 40, I'm just going to bring up, what schedule is that? C? But I think it's important to note that on an average home basis, 46.52. So now keep in mind that because of the way Ladysmith participates in functions, it's like that every year because we have a very small number of functions relative to our other areas that we participate in. So when you actually look at Schedule E, the total tax impact for of $232.85 per average home, all but $20 of that is regional recreation. So it's that shift. So don't worry about us. We're okay. But it's important to note that, and for my clarity, that general government increase for that area, and everybody I know is kind of laser focused when it comes to budget on how it impacts our individual areas, works out to $12 for average homeowner. That things like the solid waste, which is such an important initiative to expand and accommodate, it's one of our core services, works out to $7, $5 for transit, which I would love to even push further. And at this point, regional parks like less than $1 per household. So when I take, for these purposes, regional rec as a referendum function, I take that out of, sort of the conversation. I know in my area, we're looking at about $20 per average household. So despite what feels like a really heavy tax year, all of those other increases are reasonable. From my perspective, when I look at the value of the supplementals that have been approved to the way the organization functions and its efficiency, many of these supplementals have been on the books for almost as long as I've been here. I think of some of the solid waste, Bings Creek supplementals, the staffing requests. Some of those have been coming back to this table year after year and have gone from being nice to haves to really need that to please help us, right? So they're good investments in the efficiency and the performance of the organization from my standpoint. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure this is where I put my motions forward. Yes, okay. Just a comment first, and I've got a couple motions. Just the way that it worked out, some of these needed to wait till now. They're specific to Saltaire. But just first, my comment, since I joined the board last year, I know from my area, we're approaching a 50% increase over those 2 years in real dollars. I mean, this year it's going to be a little over $25 per 100,000, I believe is what I saw. You put that into sort of real numbers, that's for a working person, that's an extra 5 to 10 days that you got to work just to keep the wolves from the door. Now, I do want to say I was here with you guys and I voted for most of these supplementals. I think lots of them were absolutely needed to maintain our services. But I hope that, next year we, hopefully we're getting to a spot where we can level out. I think it's significant. So I don't want to appear like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because I've got two motions here, one for the community center, one for grant and aid. And so first I'll just speak to the community center. It's to help out with getting some heat pumps, and this is for anybody listening at home, heat pumps in the windows. I think any new homeowner, if you have a few dollars, those are some of the first things you're going to take care of. I know there's a lot of working families that use that daycare and they have to shut down often in the summer because it gets too hot. So that's part of the reason we're doing it. So I'll start with that motion. It's been a while since I've done one, so I want to thank Mr. Farquhar for helping me out with this. My motion is that the 2024 draft budget for function 456 Recreation Saltaire be amended, increase requisition by $35,235, increase MFA short-term borrowing by $281,600, increase short-term debt repayment by $64,800, and increase capital building by $281,600. Finally, decrease transfer to capital reserves by $29,565. Hopefully I got that right.
That's been moved by Director McClinton, seconded by Director Acton. Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Congratulations on your soon-to-be new windows.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully I'm doing well. One more here. I'm going to be increasing the requisitions grant aid. I'm going to be trying to help out Ruxton Island. I know they'll need to come forward and put something forward, but they're trying to work on getting some water tanks to help fight for or to make their island safer and counter any sort of mitigate fire risk, is what I should say. So that it be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for function 117, grant and aid, area G, be amended, increase requisition by $1,500, increasing grants to the organizations by $1,500.
It's been moved by Director McClinton, seconded by Director Acton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. On my first round speakers, I still have Director Morrison, and then I've got a couple for second rounds, but if folks want to speak on the first round, I'll put them in front of Directors Acton and Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question, and I do have a comment, but it's in regards to function 236 on the attachment A to the, there's an indication in here of requisition of 20,000 increased transfer to capital reserve, and I've spoken with staff, and we don't know where that came from and what that's about. I don't think we're increasing requisition beyond the 3.5%, so if we could have that investigated and corrected, I think the gas tax allocation there is correct, and other than 3.5, it should be accurate, unless we were talking about transfer of surplus beyond the 4-month maximum of operating reserve into capital, then that would make sense.
Through the chair to Director Morrison, I'll have to look back because this was from one of the minutes from the meeting, I believe, on the 7th of December.
Okay.
So I'll have to look back at that.
Great, thank you. And just as a follow-up, I don't know how deep we're going to dig into this. I spent a fair bit of time on the budget or on this agenda on the weekend. We found the $80,000 in the solid waste complex that resulted in the reduction that was announced yesterday. You know, it's about the language of how we message this, and I've already heard like 2 or 3 different approaches from folks. Yeah, the percentage number seems like it's huge, but it doesn't apply equally to everyone, so it's, you know, it's like, well, I don't know the best way to describe it. It doesn't apply equally, so it's a scary number, and I like the way the chair has addressed, you know, the huge number in his area. So other than the regional rec, we've got a budget that I think we've hashed out just about everything fairly thoroughly. And I don't see where we're going to be able to find a whole bunch of changes in here other than what, you know, we've talked about. And I think we've already had presentations on regional rec. So I just wanted to put it out there that I think we've got to a point where, unless we're looking at service cuts, we're pretty much at the number that we'll probably be adopting. And so I'm comfortable where we sit now, just as a point of reference. Yes, my number's looking pretty good, but I think without having to change focus to a huge extent and look at service cuts, I think we're just about there. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do have Director Deck and Martman on my first round list. And I appreciate Director Morrison's comment, as well as Director McClinton. You know, we're making some investments this year, I think, that staff have been asking for quite a while, and hopefully that'll, I know every year is going to be some increases and inflationary pressures, and asks from our communities. But I think we've made some big investments in the supplementals this year that have been asked for a long time, and I hope that bodes well for our future budget processes, and that we can focus on efficiencies and finding ways to deliver good service without, there's never unnecessary budget increases, I know that, but moving on, Director Deck and then Director Martman.
I'm going to make a motion about regional parkland acquisition. And what's moving me to do this is my concern for the natural infrastructure. Those parkland, forests, trees, they mitigate the effects of climate change, they protect watersheds, and they reduce the impacts on biodiversity. So my motion is that we fund the Park Acquisition Fund to increase the requisition to $958,000, which is the statutory limit of the bylaw, which would, as I understand it, is an increase of $208,000.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's the lower limit.
Of the lower of the two.
Yeah, that's the lower limit. So based on the bylaw, and Mr. Slade was correct, there's that range, and that is the lower limit, the greater of 958,000, or the per assessed value number, which is actually closer to 2.5 million, if I'm correct, Ms. Bowen?
Just looking that up.
Yeah. So,
I would
so
support
before
that
we get
motion.
into speakers on the motion, we'll get a seconder.
Second the motion, but I'd also like to see it increased further.
Okay, so here we go. All right, just a sec, everybody get comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah, we will in just a moment. I had multiple seconders on that. I want to say before we get into this discussion, because I've had this discussion before, and it's deja vu, that we just all approach it with good humor, and I don't mean to say that it's a funny conversation, but with respect for each other and our colleagues. So I'm just going to put that on the table while Ms. Bowen responds to the question, what the range is based on the bylaw.
Yeah, okay, so through the chair. So because we don't have a website up to date yet, now we have the completed roll in. Your maximum that you can go to is 2,474,730 is what your max is. And if you go to that max, you're going up from $1.96 to $6 and I think it's $6.46 per person, per 100,000.
Per 100,000?
Yeah,
You say 646?
$6.46.
So at the present or at the motion value is
If,
196?
and at the 2.4 million,
Yeah.
that would be the higher amount.
646, but
Correct.
at the 750 where we're at is $1.96.
Correct.
Okay, so right now we're sitting at $1.96, so you can kind of do the quick math based on Director Deck's motion to raise it by $250 or $208,000. You're probably looking at about a 50-cent increase. That's my quick math. It'd basically be a 26% increase to that $1.96 number.
It'd be, yeah, about 40.
40 some.
It would go from 196 to $2.50
Per 100,000.
per 100,000,
Yeah.
correct.
That was good quick math. I said around 250. And now Director Acton seconded that, but indicated she wants more. But the motion is on the floor. I do have a speakers list. What's the pleasure of the board that we set that speakers list aside? Because Director Martman, I believe you had other things you wanted to bring forward. So do we want to take a fresh speakers list on the motion? Is that okay with the board? Okay. So those who wish to speak to the motion. I'll go to the mover and seconder first, and then I'll go to, I see Director Wilson, Director McGonigal, Director Justice, Director Manhas. Really? That surprises me. Sorry, I did good humor. You can always call point of order if you think I'm out of hand. So I've got Wilson, McGonigal, Justice, Morrison, Abbott. We have lunch at noon, right? Did I miss anyone so far? Not yet. Okay, Director Wilson, you're first, then McGonigal and Justice.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Director Deck for bringing this forward. I can't support any increase in the parkland acquisition at the moment, and there are a number of reasons. One of the reason is this sheet which has come up here, which we're already looking at 15.73%. More than that, once we add in school tax, provincial tax, etc. And I've heard people saying, well, you know, you shouldn't talk about percentages, you should talk about dollars and cents. Let me say again, there is no such thing as a mere dollar and cent, especially when you see the prices in the supermarkets and all the rest of it. It may be very small to every single one of us here sitting at this privileged table. It's not a small amount to a lot of people out there who are struggling to make ends meet. So I will not be supporting this or any other increase in what we've got at the moment. I'm all in favour of keeping it as it is. That's fine, but no more increases, please.
Thank you. Director McGonigal, then Justice, then Manhas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, first of all, appreciate the presentation that was afforded us through the delegation and the passion within that of that group that wishes to see the increase. I personally, until the update of this function is afforded to us, cannot in good conscience suggest an increase at that time. I think we've had this function for a long period of time, since 2008, with the intent of updating not only the function and the referendum, but the purchase list that was afforded during that referendum. It's imperative that we look at it as a regional, and I'll emphasize that again, a regional parkland acquisition fund, where it's all communities that benefit from this. So I cannot at this point support an increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Justice, Manhas, then Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am supportive of the motion, and I would also support an increase to the amount that we dedicate to the Regional Parks Acquisition Fund, right up to the maximum. I think has been mentioned, I think the chair himself mentioned that there's many, we have to balance many priorities. And one of the balance points for me is today's demands versus looking after the future, including looking after our assets, both traditional assets and natural assets. Hopefully we are, I think we're out of balance on that. I think we're so busy putting out today's fires that we don't pay adequate attention to our sustainability goals. Hopefully when we have a look at the regional parks acquisition strategy, we'll change that balance. But for now, I will support any increase in funding to the regional parks acquisition strategy, and we'll continue to advocate for increasing it as we do our review of the parks acquisition strategy.
Thank you. I have Director Manhas, then Morrison, then Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I cannot support this increase. As Director McGonigal's mentioned, until we get an update to the master plan, I don't think we should spend any more money or increase the budget, the current budget for that. And also, given the tax increase right now, they're looking at 15.73%, and then it's going to, and also there's still the hospital tax and the school tax to be added to that. You know, like Director Wilson had mentioned that, you know, mere $2 here, $5 here. Well, all those mirrors add up to, you know, substantial amount of money for a taxpayer. So I cannot support this.
Thank you very much. I have Director Morrison, then Abbott. I've got myself on the list, but I'll always give others the spot in front of me. Director McClinton's been in there.
Thank you, Chair. This shouldn't be as tough as it feels. just thinking to, we had the presentation and my remarks earlier with, in regards to the feeling that I've had in regards to, not only defending its existence, but the adequate funding that has been, or less than adequate funding that's been directed towards this function. And when we have priorities that are, in my view, that we are prepared to cut, and we deny the ability for us, and this is just an example, and no, I'm not going to put something forward, but the ability for us to train, attend conferences, to improve our skills in our craft, we'll cut those in a heartbeat, and they're very important. But when it comes to this particular function, we have had circumstances where we haven't been able to adequately fund purchases that we would have liked to have done. We've had opportunities slip through our fingers in the past that we couldn't rationally and reasonably expect that we could go and make those purchases. The cost of participating in this function, we are told by our electorate to go forth and put money in the bank every year, so to speak, and go out and acquire lands for the general good of all of us. And I feel that we've fallen short, and it's not just in any one year. It's been consistently underfunded. And I don't know why this board and previous boards has looked to this function as the buffer when we have a tight fiscal year. And so looking at these numbers, yes, we have the discretion to fund anywhere from $0 to $2.5 million. The figure that's put forward in this motion, I think, is very defensible because it's the bottom of the range that I think anyone that would look at this function would say, yeah, absolutely, they should be at that level. But we've been stuck at this $750,000 funding level for years, and I don't accept that this should be the function that provides the buffer when we have a budget number that is unacceptable. So for the purposes of this, in this year, I think we have to be courageous. I think we have to be innovative. I think funding at this level sends a signal to the community that we've heard them about this particular function. It shows that we are serious about not only acquiring lands for recreation purposes, but we understand the need to protect critical habitats, to look at the ecosystem functions and how they will help all of us. So for this particular year, even though it's a highly stressful year, I think we have to signal to the community that this is something we value and that is important to all of us. So I will be supporting this level of funding on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we go too much further, I just want to be clear, the motion on the floor is to go to 958,000 and change, or just 958,000? Okay, so just for clear, that's what's on the floor. Because there was maybe not some clarity. Director Acton did make a comment that she would go for more. I'm going to leave that until we get through the speakers list. So on the speakers list, Director Morrison, appreciate your comments and perspective. We have Directors Abbott, McClinton, Staples, Douglas, and Acton, and myself kind of being bumped to the end of the line, as a good chair should do, until they can't wait anymore and have to say something. And again, just want to, just really appreciate the respectful tone and perspectives that everybody's bringing to the conversation. I'll go to Director Abbott next, then McClinton and Staples online.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Director Deck, for bringing this motion forward, which I support. But like a few other directors, I think it needs to be augmented. I think it needs to be a higher amount. I looked at the what we're paying now at $1.96, and the statutory limit would be $6.46. That's a total of $4.50 per 100,000. I would love to see us go for splitting that down the middle at $2.25 per $100,000 over 2 years, getting us up to the upper limit of the statutory limit. And while I appreciate that it's wise to wait for reports to be written, regrettably, global warming won't wait, climatic events won't wait. I think time is of the essence, and as I mentioned earlier, I think we're going to all be looking this summer, wondering about where our water's stored. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And sorry, I'm going to interject because I can. I just want to remember the Grant Lake. Apparently that's sold within the last year. I remember conversations around this table about the frog migrations, I think it was, from Grant Lake, around land use decisions in the area. And I didn't know that we missed an opportunity to acquire it, and that's painful to hear. I'll go to, that's right, we did, yes, that's right. Director McClinton, Staples, and then Douglas, and then Acton, and me, the bouncing ball at the end.
Thank you, Chair. I think most of you know my position on this. I won't be supporting it, and I would urge everybody just to hold off until we can get through regional rec. I would argue we've done some significant things this year on the environment. We've implemented 3Stream, which came with significant investment. We're going to be taking, 40% of our waste out of the dump, and with that, all of the emissions that come with not CO2. Methane. We've implemented the STEP code early. And some of our municipal partners have done that as well. And again, I just want you to picture working folks in their 20s and their 30s. They're using the food bank. I mean, we're seeing just in my area, I'm going to speak to that area, we're seeing this significant increase, and with very few tangible increases in services. I'm getting called out online because we can't even get our roads plowed. And again, I'm a little off topic, but I just, that we're facing a significant increase, and I would just encourage people to wait a little longer. And the last thing I would say about this referendum that happened in 2008, that was before the downturn. That was before we had the pandemic. I think people are in a very different financial position, and anything that we can do to ease the burden, I think it's our fiduciary responsibility. I think this is something that can wait. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to just ask directors, and I will keep multiple rounds of speakers lists. I like to hear from everybody and their perspectives, but I'm really going to ask that we don't rehash, the same issues if we go into rounds 2 and 3. I'm going to go to, and I wasn't speaking to you, Director McClinton, I was just saying looking forward, right? We've heard these conversations. We know the financial position people are in. We also know the crisis that we're facing around ecological values, cultural and biodiversity. Director Staples, then Douglas, then Acton on this round. Director Wilson's lined up on the next round.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Michelle.
Excellent. So there's a couple of things that come up. I'm really happy that this has come back again. And one of the things is thinking about the changes that are coming up in housing from the province, and looking at how family homes will be disappearing. That also means that access to outside space for families will be restricted. And so again, this allows us purchasing and ensuring that there's more parkland being purchased, will also help alleviate some of the stressors on there not being as much outdoor space for families in their own homes in the future. And so part of our job is to actually look far into the future and make those decisions. And so there's that. And I'm just really adding to things that I've said in the past rather than restating all the things that I've said in the past. One other piece that I'd like to add is I don't want us to move down the road of looking at private land having fees. So first of all, having no access to private lands, but second of all, having fees to access for people, because that puts on a huge barrier. We're talking about, a fairly small dollar amount when you compare to one family going to a park where you have to pay for a carload of people to get in to access that park once. And that is, that already happens in areas on Vancouver Island. And I would like us to do everything that we can to provide as much outdoor space for people to connect with nature and for families to connect without putting that, concurrent cost of having to access private lands, should that happen here, if we're not purchasing them. Because again, it is happening actively in other areas. And so for those two reasons, we'll just add the fundamental understanding that having access to outdoor space is so vitally important for the health and well-being of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors Douglas, Acton, and Martman.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll be brief. I think most of my points have been covered by the previous speakers, but I will be supporting the motion and would support the suggestion from some of the other directors that we may want to increase the amount from what was suggested by Director Deck. As was pointed out in the delegation, when we had the referendum on the Parkland Acquisition Fund in 2008, there was overwhelming support, and if anything, that support has continued to be strong since 2008. In 2020, we did a big citizen satisfaction survey for the Cowichan Valley Regional District, which indicated that there was very strong support for expanding our parkland through the Parkland Acquisition Fund, and that was pre-COVID. And what we've seen since COVID is that there is greater use in our public parks and greater interest in seeing these expanded. We're facing increasing pressure on our natural lands, our wildlife habitats, sensitive ecological areas through development, through climate change, and we're at a period right now where we're seeing increased interest from the federal and provincial government through the 30 by 30 initiative in terms of acquiring more of these lands for conservation and preservation. And if we can increase the amount we're setting aside through the requisition for this function, I think strategically it's going to put us in a much better position to leverage some of these potential funding opportunities through the federal, provincial government, other funding sources, and also working collaboratively with First Nations, who are obviously very interested in moving forward with some of the goals outlined in this 30 by 30 initiative. So definitely recognize that our residents are facing some real pressures right now in terms of the cost of living, but this is an area where all indications to date have been that our residents do support acquiring more parkland and suggest that the majority would support paying a bit extra if it's going to advance those goals.
Thank you very much. I have Director Acton and then Martman still in the first round, and Director Toporowski.
Grant Lake, it was $6 million, a whole lake, super pristine. 12 million? Oh, whatever it was, we didn't have enough money. And it's nothing, no. Like, we should have had that money. You can stick your head in the water and drink it. That's how pristine it is. It's beautiful. Anyway, but don't buy any more parkland, said nobody. Nobody has said that to me. And how we all feel, let's just call the question. Can we?
No. I have Director Martman and Toporowski. On this round, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So where do I start? I guess I'm going to start by saying that I'm sweating bullets over a couple of line items that I'm going to come to. One is for $4,000 and the other is for $10,000 for my area because we're facing a 21% increase. But I also know within my community there's a very strong ecological group that would be, all behind for all the reasons stated for this. But there's another area, a group in my area that is going to struggle with the increases. But they both have something in common, and that is water scarcity. And so the idea of updating this plan is very good, because I'm not even sure parkland acquisition represents the right name of it anymore. And if my community had some assurances, or you know, even the idea that we would be considering what it is it going to protect our pristine lake, which is the Cassidy Aquifer? Is acquisition going to protect our watershed? Because that is something that's common across my area, and you heard it when you had the other application come forward last month about how important it is to my community. And I think that I can go to my community and say, I'm in favor of this because I've heard from you about how important water is. And I think that this acquisition fund needs to be positioned to do that. Perhaps it'll come in time as we update it. We can also look at the naming of it and the terms around it as well. But I think the idea, or the concept, I think, is there in my head. So I'm in favor of doing this, despite I know there's massive increase in my area as well. And I would look as changes come forward to having further increases so that we get up to the maximum. So that's where I'm standing on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Toporowski, and then myself on round one.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's sort of like deja vu, but I'm willing to support the motion to increase by 208,000. Again, it's difficult, and you know, as we heard from the delegation, there were different factors that have happened over the years. COVID hit us. The gems that we have in our community right now are the little gems of parks that we knew about, but others that traveled away or had to go away for work were stuck at home and discovered their own backyard. And we're all connected here, and the connection also to the biodiversity, the things that we lose in our community we can't get back when developments happen. We all want fresh water, so what does that look like? And that's where we have to make those hard decisions to make sure we protect those for our community so they have fresh water. Before my mom passed away, we'd have to travel farther and farther out of town to find medicine, which some people here in town would think it was a weed growing out of the sidewalk, was actually medicine to us. And with weed control and the new things, or they come along with that heat thing and they kill them, right? So they wouldn't have a weed growing through the sidewalk. There's also, not only for mental health, our forest, but cultural. And that's something that's. I had a conversation with someone the other day. There's so much development going on right now, and it's going to increase, and they don't have a place to participate or do their cultural practices. The name of the park, we just had this discussion during our break about the regional park acquisition. I know it was something that was passed on a referendum, but again, there's what's in a name, and I think people think that we're going to build a park for trails and all sorts of things, but this would mean that we could buy a piece of property, and that could be part of the headwaters, as one of the previous directors mentioned, about protecting our water source. So, when an old growth forest, it's like a sponge. The moss that you see And it's disappeared at Stony Hill because we've had so many people walking on it. So the rocks are bare now, but it used to be so thick with moss. So those are, you know, just some of the things that I think about, and the connection to everything. And I can support this motion, but I think that having a debate to increase it even more at this time, I think we should wait till the next budget so we can have a little bit more time. I know we've debated this. I mentioned it to someone out in the hallway. I remember, I don't know, maybe being on this for 4 hours or something, discussing this, right? So, you know, and I'm just saying that. I just think that, you know, I'm going to support Director Deck's motion here today, but I think we should really look at how we communicate this to our residents on how important this is. Thank you.
Thank you. So for those of you who see my furrowed brow either on the screen or here, I'm doing math on my paper. I'm really reflecting on the values and the different perspectives in the conversation. I did the math. I'm looking at my average home tax impact for town of Ladysmith at $232.85, a 40% increase. I'm more focused on how it impacts people. I recognize that the vast majority of that is shifting of taxation from my municipal bill to a regional district bill, but also respect that for other areas where your only taxation is this plus all the things we don't control, RCMP contract changes, union changes, library challenges, and provincial taxes, that they have. I just want to tell Director Marmon I fully support the tax increases in our area. With my slightly above average home value, it'll hit me a little bit harder, and I'm happy to pay that because I know that you and your predecessor, the one thing that we would invest in Area H was protecting important lands. And we also are lucky to have the stewardship groups that we have because so many wonderful special places are protected through NGOs and other organizations in the area. Regarding the thoughts around waiting for a Parks and Trails master plan update, there's no better time than to save while you plan. When I was looking at renovations to my home, I was saving money to pay for those costs while I was planning. We have missed opportunities, not just Grant Lake, many others. In Ladysmith, we're trying to protect a really rare Douglas fir arbutus ecosystem that is unusually far away from the water's edge, and struggling to find the funds to pay for it. But working really hard and diligently with both, conservancy groups, and I would love to partner with the regional district to make a really special regional park in our area. The missed opportunities around Stocking and Holland Lake, many of those lands were logged after we lost that opportunity to acquire and protect those lands. And they've had impacts on our water supply, leading to a nearly $20 million investment in water treatment being required in Ladysmith because of the logging practices in that watershed. We talk about cultural values, but I don't think nearly enough. When we bought Butte Island through the Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund in my first term, that protected a really important cultural asset in the Ladysmith Harbor for Staminas and Ladysmith people. And I know that we continue to have discussions on how we protect the rest of those islands. Those are presently in our target list for acquisition, Dunsmuir Islands, north, as well as Woods Islands, because those are culturally significant and archaeologically recognized islands with culturally modified trees and very important ceremonial islands. Cultural values also extend to understanding the path of reconciliation so often. I didn't understand the importance of culturally modified trees, whether it was from bark stripping or modifying trees because it's a meaningful practice when honoring the dead and the ancestors of Coast Salish people, particularly in this case, Hulkaminam people and Staminas people, and why it's so important to protect those and not to keep them away from people, but sometimes that is true. We talk about Stony Hill, right? There's lots of parcels at Stony Hill that should still be acquired and protected. And maybe we can direct and teach the people that visit there about the importance in the areas to tread and those not to tread, but provide the interpretive information that helps us all grow on the path of reconciliation together, not just protecting the ecological values or the recreational values, but the value of those cultural values as well. So the quick math for me shows that the average homeowner in Ladysmith, if we went to the maximum, it would be $31.50 per average home, or $4.50 per 100,000. That would be if we went to the max. That's not this motion. This motion's much more modest. I would support the full requisition, and that's with all due respect. And I don't mean that because that's too often said before you disrespect somebody. But truly, with the greatest respect for the challenges that we have, looking at a $232.85 increase per average home. If I take out regional recreation, it's about $20. I would be happy and proud to stand by a $51.50 increase to the average homeowner, knowing that we would be building the reserves and the capability to not only be able to purchase lands that could be developed that are special and important, that would advance our reconciliation goals with the First Nations of the area and help us just be a healthier community, both in terms of ecosystem and biodiversity protection, but also recreation. I've lost 50 pounds in the last 8 months walking all of our parks and trails, whether it's Bright Angel Park, the Trestle, that goes back to Bright Angel, should be a regional park, but we'll talk about that later. But significant regional parks, Holland Creek Trail, Stocking Lake Regional Park, Heart Lake. I visit those places regularly and have gained such a much deeper appreciation of the cultural, ecological, and health benefits of being in those spaces. Finally, I often say being chair, the greatest honor is being able to co-chair the Cowichan Watershed Board. That really hammers home how important the work is and the missed opportunities, how damaging those are to the future of our valley. I fully respect the challenges that we have financially. I'm struggling myself. Elected official salaries aren't great. And when you go through major life changes, it can put a real strain on your finances. And I live those every day. I think BMO's calling me because I'm late on a credit card payment. But I pay taxes in this valley. And I know that if we pass this motion, and if there was a motion brought forward to go even further, that would have an impact on me. It would be whether it's $30, I don't know what the impact on Area H would be if we went to the max. I would take some bottles back or cut a couple cups of coffee to make sure those that I paid that tax bill. So I think we're at 10 after 12. I have a second round of speakers. I haven't got an amendment to the motion. I think perhaps we should take a break. Because I don't think this is a conversation that should be rushed, because I think it's going to be the most substantive conversation that we have today. So unless the board wants to make a different direction, we would recess the conversation until after lunch. Is there any opposition to that? I could call the question, but I would prefer that we look at the full depth and breadth of the conversation. Ms. Boyd and I have been tracking some of the conversation, both in terms of taking positions on the motion that's on the floor. It is a weighted vote, but also that there's been some expressed desire to look at potentially a different number than's on the floor currently, and I think it would be a disservice to each other and to the organization and to the valley if we didn't have a fulsome, although I hate using that word, discussion on what the opportunity is. You had a question, Director Acton.
I didn't realize we could amend this motion.
You can amend the motion at any time. The number
For
that's,
the dollar amount then?
yeah, and you could change, so
Could I do that?
I would ask that we don't do that and
Oh,
load
okay.
up our lunch with
But we could
lobbying.
do it before, okay.
I would ask that if we take a break, if somebody wants to bring forward an amendment, it would happen after we get back from lunch. Director Morrison.
I think your suggestion, Mr. Chair, is appropriate, that breaking makes sense. I would suggest that when we come back, we could certainly test the House on the question that's there, and if it's successful, then we could entertain an additional motion beyond that, and, but I think a break
Or
now.
frankly, we're done our first round of speakers, we could test the House on the motion that's on the floor now. Or if those who are on second round speakers list, Director Wilson mainly, wanted to wait until after lunch, I would give him that respect because he's on the second round speakers list.
It was your initial idea, and I would support what you'd said, that we break now and come back and get back into the business.
Yeah. Again, there's one speaker on the second round list, which Director Wilson, if he's okay with me testing the House on the motion that's on the floor.
Yeah,
I'll-
Mr. Chair, what I have to say is very, very brief, and if we want to do that and then
Okay,
get it out of the
go
way,
ahead.
then we don't
Yep.
have to have a second round there, if
Oh,
that's
we-
okay with you.
We will still be on the item, but we'll test the
Yeah.
House on this motion. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just look to my notes. What I'm going to do here is actually read my notes here, which I've made.
You did
And-
say very short.
I did. And, you know, the parkland acquisition is a misnomer. There's no two ways about it. And if this was about protecting our water sources and all the rest of it, yes, of course, I would agree to that. But I'm going to read you out something that I wrote in 2021 in an email that went to a resident, right? And I'm saying here, and this hasn't changed any. Let me be clear. I am not seeking to eliminate the parkland acquisition funding and associated tax rise on our populace. In this respect, I am quite happy to commit to progressive annual funding once the way forward, and this was during the COVID, is more clearly defined. And in actual fact, I will change my mind here, and I will support what's come forward with Director Deck, but I cannot in all conscience support anything further than that. But progressive funding is what I'm looking for here, not to eliminate.
Thank you. I respect that. I appreciate that. Any further conversation before we call the question on the motion? Director Douglas.
Sorry, just for clarity, before we call the vote, if some of us want to increase the amount, and we're calling the question now,
Then I would entertain another motion after lunch if they wanted to increase it further. You can do that. Instead of amending this motion.
it would just
Either
be a
way.
whole separate motion.
It'd be a separate motion after lunch. But we will have,
So basically,
Point of-
anyone who
point of-
wants to increase it should vote against.
no,
No.
no. That just ensures that the 958 is locked in.
Is the
and-
minimum, and you can build on that with the
Yeah,
subsequent
if you
motion.
decided to
Okay,
do that,
got
yes.
it.
Ask the question be called.
Seeing no more further hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Directors Manhas, McClinton, this is opposed. Directors Manhas, McClinton, Wilson, and McGonigal opposed. I don't think we have to do the math. The motion carries. The only heavy hitter was North Cowichan on that. One North Cowichan, 3-1. All right, we're live. Just gonna, class, if we could just settle down and get to our desks. Director Morrison's taken a job with the regional district. He's sitting with the CAO. So we are live. I want to thank everyone for being prompt, and if Director Toporowski could share everything with the class. Can you pass that note to the front, please? Oh, okay. I would not want to be between Directors McClinton and Wilson on a good day. All right, in all seriousness though, appreciate everybody's good humor in the conversation this morning. We still are on SR1, and I know that there are other items that we need to discuss. I know on my speakers list, just so everybody's aware, kind of circling back, I gotta find, because there's so many speakers lists here. I think I had directors, just 1 second here. Martman, Wilson, Acton, and Douglas was before the motion came forward. But who's got their echo machine on? Oh, it got muted. But we are still on the regional parkland acquisition discussion. I know that we passed before the break the change in requisition from 750,000 to 908,000. But I do understand that there may be a desire to bring forward a subsequent motion, and I think, you know, I sense that we have time for that in terms of the discussion. I just would ask that if we do get that motion coming forward, that we've all represented our perspectives really well in the first discussion, and I've got time for everyone to reinforce their position on whatever motion comes forward, but just to continue to keep it respectful of each other's perspectives, and you know, I really enjoy the dynamic of our group. I was saying during the break that we have very disparate views, whether it's ideologically or politically, what the priorities are, and we all recognize the challenges that are before us, and the intersecting challenges that we have around fiscal responsibility, but also things like biodiversity protection, cultural values, and all the pieces that seem to get embroiled and really tied into the regional parkland acquisition discussions. But I'm going to, based on seeing the people that were next on the sort of pause speakers list, I'm going to set those aside so we got kind of a clear table. So I'd look for a motion or from questions from directors. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I would like to move a motion to fund it to the full extent, and I'd like to speak to that if I have a seconder.
Do we have a seconder for that? I see Director Abbott seconding, and I'll go to Director Nicholson first on my speakers list.
So thank you. I appreciated hearing from everyone and how they felt about the Parkland Acquisition Fund, and I thought Mr. Slade did a huge favor to us this morning by really pointing out the opportunity that we have going forward. I would echo Director Douglas's did a pretty good summary of all the ecological importance of parkland or protecting lands for the future from an ecological perspective. And Director Stone, or Chair Stone, did a pretty good, he sort of went through a whole bunch of opportunities that we have across the region, which made me really understand that this is a big region, and like $2.5 million does a drop in the bucket if you're really talking about serious land protection, which I think we're beginning to realize the importance of that. I'm thinking that we should go up to the max this year. I think that Director Douglas was right about the strategic positioning from a leveraging point of view. But I would also add that we should really think about this advisory committee that we're setting up and ask them for specific advice on how we can encourage the rest of the citizens that can afford a lot more money to contribute to this, that we set up some sort of a program for donors for ecological services. I really think when I think about myself personally, I think it's really a big investment, and I certainly would forego many bottles of wine to contribute to a fund. And I know I'm not the only person like that. And I think we could do a lot more to really make sure that the people that can afford are really, and want to contribute, are doing it in a really thoughtful way that's going to benefit the region moving forward.
Thank you. Director Abbott, you seconded it. I did put you on the speakers list. Did you want to speak to it? No. Director Deck, I saw your hand. Was that just a second, or did you want to speak to it? No? Okay. Director Acton, and then Director McGonigal.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of differing views. We've got like both sides of the spectrum. I was hoping that we could have landed maybe like in between. We've landed at $1 million. Our max is 2.5 million. I was kind of hoping we could go in the middle somewhere so that we weren't bringing along those who really didn't want to, so that we just didn't kind of like force people into this year so much. So I'm gonna sit back and listen some more, but because we do have financial issues in our community, so it is a big jump, and I think it just feels a little bit destructive to our relationships. I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to the next speakers and update my speakers list, I just want to be clear. So it's $4.50 per 100,000 based on the motion that's on the floor. So increase per 100,000, right? So you can look at your Schedule E, look at the average value of your home and do some math. Director Wilson's pointed out that average is a number. It's not really representative of an actual home, and it'll affect different property owners differently. So, sorry, I did see some hands there, but what I have right now is Director McGonigal, Wilson. I thought I saw another hand before Director Justice. Wilson, or Justice Douglas, Abbott, Morrison. Okay, I'm going to try and keep sense of this mess that I've created here, because this has been a lot of speakers. Yeah, thank you. Usually I can keep all my speakers list on the actual printed copy of the agenda. Not today. I've covered my whole agenda with speakers lists. So I'll go to Director McGonigal, then Wilson, then Justice, and then I'll get this transposed onto a clean piece of paper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a spare sheet here should you need it. I'm not going to rehash all the comments I made earlier on the first motion, but it would appear that we have gone from a pandemic to a financial demic, and we're adding to that financial demic at every opportunity. I understand the rationale of moving forward with this, but until the true regionalism of this function can be identified, I cannot support another increase that has already incrementally been done previously. I too suggest that until the time of that update comes, that we pause where we are currently. We have increased it for the first time in a number of years, and perhaps a calm second thought would be appropriate at this time.
Thank you. Directors Wilson, Justice, Douglas, Abbott, and Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. He does speak well, doesn't he, this guy by the side of me here?
He's such a great thermostat.
I know. I'm glad you mentioned the average home price here and how that affects taxes. What we don't speak about, and what I haven't heard anyone speak about, is the average person and how their predicament it will be affected by this. Luckily, my wife Barbara and I have transitioned from being the bank of mum and dad, which I'm sure there are a lot of those folks in here, to the bank of grandparents with our close family. Now, my close family have very good jobs, but they're finding it hard going as well, all four of them. And we're in a position where we can help them out. But not everybody is that fortunate. The average person doesn't do as well as they do because for whatever reason, they don't have the education, whatever reason they're here, right? So from that point of view, what about these less fortunate people, right? The hard-working residents who are having a hard time making ends meet. They will be more drastically affected by a mere $7 a year than anybody else at this table. So I'm asking that we don't agree to this increase. We keep it at the previous amount of $958,000, which in itself represents a 21% increase in what we were paying before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to briefly state my intention to support this motion. I'm actually very excited about this motion. It fills me with a sort of a hope that you get from moment to moment. And I'm sure that many of our citizens, and especially our young ones, will feel hope from us going in this direction.
Sorry, I thought that was a setup, but that was the full breadth and depth. I appreciate that very much. Sorry, I was looking at my paper, drawing a doodle, getting ready to listen intently. Director Douglas, and then Abbott and Morrison.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll be brief. I know for a lot of us trying to assess the projected tax increase, what many of us find helpful is looking at how it impacts the average household. And so I did some calculations on how increasing the requisition for this function to the maximum amount would impact the average household in North Cowichan, but I think it would be comparable to any electoral areas in other municipalities as well. So currently, average home in North Cowichan is assessed at $742,449. Prior to the motion we passed just before the break, the average North Cowichan household would have been paying $14 total per year towards the Parkland Acquisition Fund. With the increase we made just before the break, that pushes it up to about $18.56 per year per the average household. And if we were to go to the maximum amount, we'd be looking at $47.96 per household. And again, it's a tough year. Many households, families are facing real pressures right now with the increases in the cost of living. But to think that, for less than $50 a year, the average household could have such a big impact on our future plans in terms of parkland acquisition and protection of ecological areas. My sense, based on what we saw with the 2008 referendum, what we saw with the 2020 citizen survey here in North Cowichan, what we've seen with some of our own citizen satisfaction surveys in North Cowichan specifically, is that there is a significant amount of support for this approach. And I would be happy to relay this to our residents, the decision we made here, and to defend it, because I think there's a lot of public support again for increasing the amount of funding we're setting aside for this purposes. So all that's to say that I will be supporting the motion from Director Nicholson to increase the requisition amount for the Parkland Acquisition Fund.
Thank you. Director Abbott, then Morrison, and then myself, the bouncing ball that keeps getting pushed along for those who want to speak before me.
Thank you, Chair. I'm, as the seconder of this motion, a little reticent to make the suggestion, but listening to some of the compelling statements from Director Acton, I'd go back to an earlier comment before lunch where I suggested that perhaps we hit the max over a 2-year period to make this more palatable for some of those districts. And I should also mention that I've received correspondence over lunch from an area member of Area C saying, perhaps some of the those with the poorest of home situations, small homes, tiny homes, mobile homes, which are going to be the beneficiaries of such continued purchases and acquisitions of parkland. So thank you, David Slade, for sending that in.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm struggling with this. Heard what all of you have said, and I'm just thinking of all the work that we've been doing over the budget time and how, I can't believe I'm pulling this one out of the memory banks, but there was an awful lot of wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth as we debated various budgets and supplementals. And I think during this process, we signaled to the community and to each other a desire for some fiscal responsibility, and I think that we worked hard to get to where we got to this morning, and it is, and I hadn't seen any indication while we were doing our work that we would be looking at, not quite a $2 million increase. So I'm struggling with that part, in that we did all this good work. Staff came to us with a 6% ask. We said 3.5%. They went away. Look at all the great work that they did in getting a whole bunch of, like, 90-some-odd% of the budgets came in at 3.5%. So I applaud that work, but I also think about the signal that it sends, that all of this hard work was done by staff and by this group, and now we go to a huge increase from 750,000 to 9 to possibly 2.5 million. So I too agree with the notion that we need to get there. We haven't been at the max for years. We could get there next year if the same will was present during next year's budget discussions. But I think going to the maximum at this point is a little beyond what I could do, given our record and the work that we've done till now. So I'd be comfortable at a 1.6, 1.7, but I don't think I can go to the full amount. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't getting choked up there. I was just choking on my saliva. Director Marmon.
Hardly time to form my thoughts. So I have a view of the Cowichan Valley like a crown, and in that crown there's jewels, and that's our electoral areas. And sure, municipalities are all part of it, and Area H has a really big jewel in the middle of that crown, but in my mind. And so, but, I keep coming back to sort of the principles, and it was mentioned by our delegation that, this really came about through a referendum. And I'm wondering how, in a principle world, we move from, people ask for referendums, give me a referendum, I want to have a choice on something. And when you do it and you move away from that, what are our principles around that? How would you deal with it personally if you said okay, you're open for a vote, and what do you want to do? And then you said, well, I can adjust that every year. I can make science, based on what's going on around in my family or personal life. And I go so why even go to a referendum if you don't stand by the principle of it? And so I keep coming back to that in my head because I can't balance that out with our discussions. And so where I would land with this is, where was the referendum? What was the amount? Let's land on that, and then we can discuss whether the board's bylaw is appropriate at $7 at some point. But I certainly would want to land to say we stand by the principle of a referendum, and that's what we have to work from. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just doing some quick math over here. I heard some just commentary on the possibility. I know we're at 900 and, is it 58,000? But this idea of getting there over 2 years, Director Acton kind of spoke to it. if we went from our original 750 number, that would be an additional 875 to take it to 1625 this year, and then 875 next year to take it to 2.5 million. So if you split that initiative over 2 years, made a motion to that effect, it would, have the increase for each year, but perhaps provide some direction to next year's budget process to include that second piece as a bridge of moderation, if you will. I'm not going to make the motion. I just did the math. I don't want to rehash my many words that I often get accused of saying too many of. I think it was yesterday. I was being told that. I hear a conversation, though, and I didn't reflect on it, about the master planning process. I spoke of many properties in the region that are not referred to, some that are, and others that are not referred to in the existing target list, if you will, for regional parkland acquisition. Talking with Director McGonigal and Director Morrison about the West and how many important, fragile, and unprotected ecosystems, recognizing that private forest land owners hold so many critically important ecosystem lands, including the old growth stands at Coxsila and others around the region. And that with some weight behind it, including the conversations around leveraging other funding opportunities, whether it be through land trusts or senior governments as we move to the 30 and by 2030 initiatives, looking forward to funding opportunities through there and leveraging contributions to the Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund to do just that. And just the disappointment when you lose that opportunity and then you see those lands lost because, once a sensitive ecosystem is developed, it is lost. Restoration is, what do they say, an ounce of prevention versus a pound of cure. So I'm open. I'm in support of the motion as presented. But I also am mindful of the dynamic that is always a delicate balance, just like our ecosystems that we have within this organization or around this table. I said earlier today that I think that this is a really cool, unique, and could be a representative example about how people from very different points of view with different priorities, all dealing with the same intersecting crises around finance and social fabric and ecological climate change, all those things can try and work together in a moderate but progressive way. So I guess I would put it out there that as it sits today, at this moment, I would be supporting the motion that's on the floor, but I also respect what my colleagues have put forward around the idea of modifying what's been put forward to take it over a 2-year time frame that would show respect for the concerns and priorities of everyone around this table. And I would suggest that if it was a director's pleasure that a motion could be made that we hit that over the next 2 budget cycles. So I would just leave it at that. Of course, you can amend the motion, so that's what I was kind of suggesting. I did see 3 hands at once, so Director Acton asked me the question can we make an amendment? Of course, that's always the privilege of the body. I had Director Wilson, Deck, and then Morrison put their hands up during my long-windedness. Director Wilson, and then Deck, and then Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a sensible way of doing things, and as I've said before, progressive funding as opposed to these huge jumps. I'm surprised that that we're even considering putting even more to the thing there. Director Martman did make reference to the referendum which was held, and the need for us to stick to what that actually brought forward, and it is a good point. But here we go. Let's go back to that referendum, and this is from the board of May the 14th, 2008. And the motion was that a referendum be held throughout the entire regional district to obtain the opinion of the electors regarding establishing a 10-year commitment to a regional parkland acquisition at a rate of $5 per 100,000 of net taxable value. And that was referred to the Regional Services Committee. When that question went to a referendum, there was no mention of a 10-year review period. It disappeared into thin air, and I still don't know where it's gone from. So, yes, we can stick to what the referendum said, but at the same time, the referendum that went to the general populace did not include that 10-year review period, and that is what Director McGonigal was told. We need to review because the circumstances in 2008 are totally different to the circumstances that exist right now. There's your problem right there. There was a time of plenty. There was a time of all sorts of other things that came into it, which do not and may not ever exist again in the way we live. So I will support the 958, or if necessary, I may even think about supporting a progressive increase here, but I cannot, in all conscience, support these huge one-step increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wilson. I've got Director Deck and then Director Morrison.
Thank you, colleagues, for all your thoughtful comments. I just, now I'm thinking that I didn't realize at the time that I put forward this motion that there was an even higher level that we could have reached. And now that I know that, of course, I'm in favor of that. Because I'm worried that we will be less and less able to afford land that is becoming more rare due to being bought up and developed, and as a result, the land that's left will be valuable and maybe out of our reach. So I think time is of the essence, and if we have this opportunity, I think the future, we owe it to the future, that's future children, future wildlife, to take this opportunity and fully fund to the maximum the Park Acquisition Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just want to make my line of inquiry around procedurally how would be the most appropriate way of going at this. I'm comfortable with the question being called. I'm just wanting to know if there is a preference, because if the question is called and the full amount is defeated, a subsequent resolution could be brought forward that was of a lesser amount. So, that's a path that we could do, or there could be, as you might have alluded to, a amendment of this motion that the full amount over 2 years and the direction be given for next year's budget process. I think there's a bunch of very valid things that have been discussed around this, but specifically, how do we get to the ultimate number procedurally with the least amount of grief is what I'm asking. Like I would amend the motion to say full amount over 2 years, but I don't want to upset the apple cart. If it's preferred that we vote on the motion, and then if it fails, introduce another motion, I'd be comfortable with that. I guess I'm asking you, what's your pleasure?
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Then call the question on the motion.
I do not have any more speakers on my list. If there's no further speakers, I will call the question. Go ahead.
That the CVRD Board fund the Regional Parkland Acquisition 285 to the full maximum amount of $2,474,730.
Okay. Everyone clear on the motion? Calling the question, all those in favor? And opposed? Hold your hands up, please, folks. I'll go around the table. Segal? She's at the top. Manhas? Acton? I haven't got to the side of the table. Anyone on this table? Anyone on this side of the table? Director Martman is opposed?
Yeah. Oh, no. No, it's,
Motion carries. So it's a weighted vote, yeah. So just for clarity, directors opposed were Wilson, oh, sorry, wrong one. Directors Wilson, Segal, Acton, Wilson, Morrison, McClinton, Martman, Manhas, and McGonigal. So because of a weighted vote, that was 22 votes against and 26 for. So the motion carries. I just want to say though, and I respect for some of our colleagues. I think the idea of introducing the opportunity for the 2-year period was in respect of everything that's been heard. I also respect the way that our system works at this table, and I hope that we don't carry a hangover with that. I don't see any of the people on the prevailing side looking chuffed or gloating. And I hope those who are on the not prevailing side sort of accept and understand where we're all coming from. So I know we all have respect for each other around this table. Director McGonigal.
Just an observation, Mr. Chair, that it would seem that this side opposed that side.
And I know from the lectern, that's the right-hand side of the table.
So we are all left-hand thinkers on this side, is what you're saying?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to
Just
say.
a comment, if I may. I appreciate everyone's input in this, and unfortunately, I will follow along with the board's decision. I will support the board's decision. That is what a good politician does. I will not say that I was opposed to it in any language. You have seen my thoughts and my processes, and it's on YouTube if you wish to review that for those who are watching at home. I am going to find it difficult to mention to my community, who has a median income of $35,200 to $41,600, of the decisions that we did make. Sorry for that soapbox.
No problem. Director Martman.
Thank you. Is there a procedure to cross the floor in this?
Yeah, if we could just switch directors Toporowski with Martman. From one side of the house to the other, Director Acton.
Is it possible to just add a friendly amendment to that it's over the next 2 years?
No, that I tried to hang that opportunity out there. Unfortunately, it wasn't done. I offered the
We
opportunity.
kept saying, can we amend the motion?
I said if someone wants to make the amendment, sorry, Director Martman.
Sorry, just to follow up. So if we don't have a way to cross the floor, I'll move it to our chair of our governance committee to look into it.
Your chair of your governance committee was the one who finalized the seating chart, so we needed to provide some balance, hence Directors Toporowski and Martman are across from each other. A rose among thorns on each side. Okay. So we're still on SR1. I know there may have been other budgetary conversations under that item that directors wanted to bring forward. I don't want us to lose focus on any other items that wanted to be discussed, but if not, then we will move on to SR2. I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, Director Acton.
Yeah. So,
Under SR1.
I sent it out to the board. This is for the feasibility study, function 130. And it's not an increase to tax requisition, but it is recommendation from staff, supported by staff, that it's recommended that 2024 budget for function 130 electoral feasibility studies be amended to increase the transfer from operating reserve from 5,000 to 15,000 and increase the transfer from consultants, for consultants, from 45,000 to 55,000. And happy to speak to it.
You're moving that item. Do we have a seconder?
No, one's going to second my email.
Oh, there, Director Morrison seconds, so it's on the floor for discussion.
We're still in shock. Yeah.
Okay. I know we just
I
came.
know, I'm in shock too.
So- So,
That was not fair that last time.
excuse me, Director Acton, that's not appreciated. I gave ample opportunity. I paused and said, did anyone want to introduce an amendment? Director Morrison said, would want to, or do we want to test the House on this? Nobody spoke up. So I calmly and slowly called the question. I was hopeful that someone would introduce the amendment. We had
Is it too late?
Well, there are procedural remedies available, so let's deal
Okay.
let's deal with the motion that's on the floor to keep things clean. Ms. Bowen, thank you. I think Ms. Bowen's in shock, so.
Okay.
And then maybe we could just take a couple minutes recess to gather ourselves and have a conversation about if what just happened. I'm the chair, and I thought I had anticipated all outcomes of 1:15 to 2 p.m. And so your motion is on the floor, though, Director Acton, so let's speak to that.
Yes, so this is the feasibility study, only electoral areas pay into it, and these are actually just funds being reserve funds. I just think that we just never know what's gonna happen. We could have water systems problems, sewers problems, any kind of thing that happens for electoral areas. This is our only budget to work from for those types of things. So I think we would be short-sighted not to increase it more. And staff wrote the recommendation for me, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Director Martman's hand.
Yeah, I'm, this is adding to the budget, but I am in favor of this because, Director Atkins, give me the. No, it's not that. Okay, yes, it's not increase. But just for the people listening or the people that want some more understanding of it, when there's a group in my community that wanted to bring a water system online, this is where they went to get that funding that they paid back, but at the same time, it provides that opportunity to do the feasibility study. So it's one of those things where it's worth having, and just make sure that we can take things on board when we're able to with board direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martman. Any more speakers to the motion? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I'd like to just take a 7-minute recess until 2 o'clock. I want to confer with the Vice Chair and Ms. Boyd. And to be fair, I'm not sure that it sits well with me. I felt maybe I'm being too empathetic, but a little bit of a shift in the room. Again, I want to say, personally, I'm very supportive of taking those strides on the Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund, but I also recognize that under a weighted vote, it's not very often a regional district chair ends up being a deciding vote on something, and I just think I need to take a few minutes to consider the implications of the vote. Still going again, and then we'll resume proceedings. Okay, folks, I want to make sure we have everyone in their seats, so Directors McGonigal and Douglas are still missing. They balance each other out. Okay, let's go. No. I know they'll want to be here for this. We're live. Sorry for the break. I think I tried to offer as much opportunity for people to modify the motion, provide some mitigating amendments if they needed. That didn't come forward. I'm not going to use the chair's prerogative to recall the motion and reconsider it, but it is open to the body on a 2/3 majority to reconsider the motion. I'm not sure why Director Douglas and Director McGonigal aren't here right now. But in fairness to the body and to them and to everybody we serve, I'd like them to be at the table. I know that Danielle's, or Ms. Miles Wilson's out there looking for them. I'm not sure why they would pick now to step out. Well, I gave us a break till 2 o'clock. Yeah, it's 4 after 2.
Do they count as a positive?
1 to 1. Okay. And so, again, what I was saying was reconsideration is a motion that can be made by anyone in the body. If it's seconded, it's a 2/3 majority or 11 directors to reconsider. The vote tally on a numbers, like a non-weighted basis, was tied 8-8, but on a weighted basis passed 26 to 22 votes. So I will open the floor. Director Acton, I don't understand. I'm explaining to you what the opportunity is for the board. I really appreciate if you could.
do.
Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion for reconsideration if I can get a seconder.
It's been seconded by Director Morrison.
Yeah.
Director, for reconsideration is non-debatable, isn't it? Non-debatable, so
I
there's
can't
no
say
debate.
anything?
No.
Okay.
So we've already had conversations about some alternatives, and it's a 2/3 majority for reconsideration. I'm going to call, there's no discussion unless it's on a point of order, on procedure.
I understand that. I just would like to confirm that the weighted vote was
26 to 22.
because I counted 28.
Okay. So there's 48 total weighted votes. Opposed was Directors Oh, okay. This is an old sheet. That's helpful. So that said, I think it was the voting strength for Ladysmith is what on this sheet?
You're at your maximum.
Okay, I'm at 5 still. So what are the other North Cowichan has 4 each, right? So those are right. City of Duncan.
Michelle, 3.
Area E has 3. Area Karen has 1. Area D has 4.
Yeah. Hillary.
Did I add it up correctly?
I've got 48.
Just let me double check here.
48 total votes.
3, 8, 11, 15, 18, 19, 21, 23, 24, 27, 31, 35, 39, 43, 45, 50. This is wrong. But when we go through, so it is 28 to 22, not 26 to 22. So to be clear, I thought I could have flipped it. I could not, so I don't feel as guilty. But that being said, the motion for reconsideration is on the floor. We have not called the question, so we do have clarity that the Excel spreadsheet didn't tabulate the numbers right there. So now that I'm absolved of any guilt, on the motion to reconsider, which would be 11 directors in favor for reconsideration, needed for reconsideration, 2/3 majority. All those in favor of reconsideration? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My hand's up for that, 8. And those opposed? Opposed to reconsideration? Okay, can you hold your hands up high, please? So we have Directors Toporowski, Justice, Deck, Nicholson, Staples, and Douglas opposed. How many is that opposed? Motion to reconsider is carried. That's what I thought. There was some misunderstanding. So the motion is back on the floor. Before I go to the speakers list. Sorry, if 6 were opposed, we needed 11 to carry. Sorry, it's just 4. 4 reconsideration, raise your hand. So is yeah, it's not weighted for reconsideration. Keep your hand up until your name's called, please. M10, yeah. Yeah, the motion. Okay. Okay. I just, I wanted to give everyone the opportunity, and I appreciate the conversation, but we'll move on then. So we do have other budget items. Director Acton just went through the electoral, your item. I'll go back to you, sorry, for another item if you had another one, Director Acton.
Thank you. This is for function 467, Shawnigan Lake Historical Society, to increase the requisition to $30,000.
Are you moving that?
Moved, yep.
Okay, seconded by Director Staples. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I'll see if any other, how many more do you have? 2 more?
2 more.
Is the body okay if we just let Director Acton go through her stuff? Go ahead, Director Acton.
Thank you. Function 478, Cowichan Station Association Area B, to increase the requisition to $15,000.
Okay, moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Do you have another one, Director Acton?
Yes, for Shawnigan North budget requisition number 680.
Yeah.
That it's recommended that the 2024 budget for function, oh, shoot, that's the wrong one. Can you give me a second?
I think
Can you come back?
Ms. Boyd has it, because you emailed it, did you not?
Yeah.
Ms. Boyd, do you want to read it and see if that's the right one?
Sure, that'd be recommended that the 2024 budget for Function 680, Shawnigan Lake North Water System, be amended to increase the user fees from $260,000 to $330,000, and to increase the transfer to reserve from $0 to $70,000.
That's been moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Bowen, you look urgent.
Through the chair to Director Acton, I just have a question. With 467, you want to up it to 30,000 because it already is at 30,000.
Oh, it just maybe wasn't updated. It's
No,
Area B,
that's,
because it said
That's
26,000
480.
online.
okay. Yeah, that one hasn't been updated yet, that's why. So they're already
That's
at
all.
30.
It is 30.
Already at 30,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's
that's
just a
fine.
redundant motion.
Thank you, sorry.
She just wanted to double confirm it gets to 30.
I just didn't want to up it and make sure that I got the right one. Okay, I'll look at the other one next too.
All right. So, sorry, I should get back on my agenda here if I can read through all my speakers list scribbles. Are we still on SR1? I feel like we're jumping all over the place. It's like just diving in. We do have for information here then SR2, Ms. Boyd? Maybe if you can introduce that item and we'll see if there's anything to be picked out of that.
Thank you, Chair. SR2, report from the Finance Division, Corporate Services Department regarding 2024 draft budget overview.
And that's for information. I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, Ms. Boyd, we'll go on to SR3.
Thank you, Chair. A report from the Finance Division, Corporate Service Department, public feedback on 2024 budget for information.
Thank you, and I was able to, sorry about all the text messages through to staff when I couldn't get onto the first one. I don't know how, but I just got into the second one with no problems. But Ms. Bowen, did you want to share anything with us, or I know they're available, I believe the sessions are available online now, and they were available online for the area directors at the time. And Director Abbott, I hope you know that when I was texting you during that thing, it wasn't meant to admonish you. I was just like, yeah, because I wasn't sure. Sometimes you can't get tone by text. I was like, these are all open for everyone, but.
So through the chair to the board, I was talking with Danielle and Ian, and we're going to bring some suggestions maybe forward for improvements to this type of online publication for the 2025 budget.
Okay, thank you. Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much. It was a struggle for me to join and a struggle for my counselors to attend this, given an invite that was sent and then having to go to the website and join through the finance portion of the website. I had suggested during our meeting that we return to a in-person portion, especially when we have impacts significantly increasing the budget as this year. I think it's important that we get as many people to those individual meetings as possible. When we look at the synopsis of 4 people joining 4 different meetings, that's not engagement, in my opinion. That's not communication, in my opinion. I think we have tried this for a number of years, and the success rate of those attendance values have not improved significantly, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miles Wilson.
Hello. It's so recognizing, and I've been here for 2 budget cycles now, and our engagement last year was low as well, and this year was lower. But we've thrown around some ideas of how we could encourage more engagement, and I think that having the virtual option of the recording is helpful, and a lot of people don't want to participate, but it's still a way to get information. And so we've been throwing around some ideas of potentially putting out a video in anticipation of where you may be going with it, is to go back to in-person, so that the public could also have a couple weeks lead time on digesting information before an in-person public session. So those are just some ideas we've been talking about, but staff are open to doing whatever you guys feel that the community would be open to, and we can definitely work with communications to come up with some improved ways of doing this.
And just to follow up, if I may, especially this year with the regional recreation coming on, that was such an impact throughout the region, I thought it was important that the true information and not the Facebook or social media information be presented to those who are impacted the most by it. So it's not to suggest that we consistently go to an in-person, but when there is significant increases that impact the region as a whole, I think it's important to have that face-to-face where we can take the questions as well as staff to stand by what those decisions are that we have made.
Thank you. Thank you. The temperature's been turned up, and in-person might help to turn it down. Director Marmon.
Thank you, Chair, and I think I echo Director McGonigal for some part. Just a correction on, yes, there was 4 people that attended 4 sessions, but I think they all attended. I counted 4, the one I attended, so I think there was 3 sessions that didn't get attended. Now getting a nod, is it correct? And you know, and it is a budget year, and the people that came and asked questions, I think I know 3 out of the 4, and they're really good questions. But I don't know how you get more engagement, and that's, I think, is really the essence of it. And I look towards trying to, you know, I have a town hall tonight. It'll be at the top of my mind, and it'll hopefully be top of theirs, but it isn't often something that really resonates with people. And so I'll be able to refer them to the video, and I will do that. And I think that gives them some place to go that can provide the direct information, and then use budget@cvrd.bc.ca. I'm learning.
Ms. Bowen?
Yeah, through the chair to Director Marmon, we've updated the finance area. When you go into the budget link and the budget page, we have put that budget email address on there now.
Thank you. That goes to a conversation we had before about how people can reach the board as well as finance regarding the budget. I have no more hands on this item. Okay, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. SR4, report from the Cowichan Community Center, Community Services Department regarding the 2024 budget adjustment for emergency warming center cost. The recommendation is that the 2024 budget for Function 420 events and services be amended as follows in the order to support the emergency warming center at Cowichan Community Center until March 31st, 2024. 1, increase tax requisition by $70,000, and 2, increase operational costs by $70,000.
Thank you. Director Segal?
I'd move the motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Director Abbott. Discussion, Director Segal.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Mr. Elzinga could come and just explain, I just remind us of what other things we have approved in previous meetings and this, and just give us the full context.
Through the chair to Director Segal. Mr. Rob Williams is online. He can speak specifically to this report if there's any specific questions, but in entirety, the reports that have been presented to the board outline some of the expenses that have happened. Some of the costs are recoverable, depending whether the emergency warming center is activated or not. The board has chosen for all-day security, even when the emergency warming center is not activated, which has added to some of the costs. The other contributing factor is that the Cowichan Community Center is risk assessed, which means that we normally have maintenance personnel in there 20 hours a day as opposed to 24. Through this process, we need them 24 hours, so it's an additional cost of 4 hours of operations time each day.
Thank you. And just for clarity, these are in addition to the extra $50,000 that was also allocated by the board at the last board meeting.
That is not my understanding, Mr. Chair. It's in addition to the $50,000 in Growing Communities Fund that was allocated at the last meeting. So
Yeah.
I promised the board that we would come forward with a report on the February 8th, 9th budget meeting.
Yeah.
This was already in the works for that. But I would look to Mr. Rob Williams perhaps to confirm that the $70,000 with the $50,000 in Growing Community Funds was the extent of the ask.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Did I miss a speaker? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I believe that takes us to the end of our agenda, Ms. Boyd. And that's it. We haven't adopted, that allows staff to go and make the bylaws and such for adoption. Just from staff, can we maybe just have a brief little description of next steps in the budget process?
Through the chair. So I will take all of this information back now and plunk it into my lovely big spreadsheet that will calculate all the percentages and values per 100,000. We'll update all of the stuff on the website as best we can, and then on the 28th, we'll bring back the budget to be adopted.
Thank you. Question, Director McClinton.
I'd just like to say thank you for all your hard work. I know this is a tremendously busy time, and you've done a wonderful job answering my questions, and I know I was watching with everybody else. Thank you, and to the rest of the staff, yeah, I know this is a really challenging time. Thank you.
I guess I couldn't say it better than that. Thanks for stealing my thunder, Jesse. Any further discussion before we move to question period? Seeing nobody in the gallery, I think that takes us to a motion to adjourn. Sorry, Director Abbott, did you want to take your hat off and go and stand at the lectern?
Yeah. Do we have a meeting tomorrow morning?
No, we do not, because that would have been if we went much longer into the evening today. We would have had tomorrow as a catch-up space, but we won't need to because we've concluded the business. Looking for a motion to adjourn? Well, I'm just going to let it hang there. We can hang out for a bit. Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all. We'll see you next week. Committee chairs.